You know, a story I was listening to this morning about some through hikers on the AT that was going through the Maryland section ran into some really strange phenomena one night, we'll say, and throughout the night. Turns out when they were passing through coincided with a date relevant back to the Civil War. And it reminds me of one of the stories from Appalachia that haunts me the most. And it's not even necessarily a ghost story, but I'm talking about Shelton Laurel. Now, it very well could be a ghost story. I'm not saying because Shelton Laurel backcountry intersects with the Appalachian Trail. So it wouldn't surprise me a bit to hear a story out of a January wintertime morning in western North Carolina there where some phenomena happened over the night. But Shelton Laurel, the story has haunted me ever since I first heard it. And what a lot of people don't know is that Appalachia, in particular, in fact, large sections of East Tennessee and western North Carolina, obviously, and portions of Virginia too. But that whole region were very staunch Union supporters. Matter of fact, there were over 25,000 volunteers from North Carolina and over 50,000 volunteers from Tennessee for the Union Army. Well, these were strong Union supporters and holdouts. Like a lot of the people here had actually served for the Republic recently in the Revolution. Very, very strong Union supporters. And people in Appalachia were poor. They weren't slave owners. But Sheldon Laurel, though, is a different story because these guys were neighbors. Now, don't get it wrong, because I'm going to tell the true story. There's a lot of fiction. It's been like romanticized, but Shelton Laurel was ugly. One of the guerrilla warfare was common on both sides. That they don't want to really advertise it, but both sides were doing it. But it was most in your face, I think, at Shelton Laurel because these guys were neighbors from like the same county, and it represented the contrast how there were very few wealthy, landowners or politicians who even had slaves. So it just wasn't the opinion of the common man in Appalachia. So the Confederate generals in this town had resorted to the tactic of making sure the supplies, the salt in particular, were not available to Union supporters in the area. Well, these were civilians, but that was basically a sentence for starvation in Appalachia in the wintertime. If you didn't have salt, that was the only way to preserve food for long times. Wasn't much in the way of preservatives back then. Well, anyway, salt literally was like meant the chance between survival and not. So they cut off the salt supply. Some civilians and Union supporters did organize a resistance. They took some salt and other necessary supplies. Well, when the Confederates came back, they were out actually in East Tennessee trying to maintain their control there. And they got back here and found what had happened, and two prongs of Confederates came in to Shelton Laurel that day. They met a small resistance. At the end of it, they got wives and mothers from the townspeople and held them under threat of harm to make the men come out and surrender themselves. At the end of all that, they had 15 men, non-combatants, prisoners, suspected in taking salt, suspected in leading a salt raid. Well, they told them that they were going to take them to Knoxville and they were going to have their day in court. Well, that is not what happened. These 15 prisoners, two of them escaped. And then after those two escaped, a decision was made, and from the age range of 13 to over 60 were the age range of these prisoners, and they were subjected to the most heartless of war crimes. I'm not even going to spell it out here. If you want to, today is National Museum Day. Crack open a book if you want to get that graphic. Let me just take my word for it. It was as awful as anything Quattro or Bill Anderson did. As bad as anything the Redlegs did, it happened at Shelton Laurel. And even worse, well, you'll just have to read about the particulars yourself. But sometimes in Appalachia, it's our history that haunts us. It's those things, neighbor against neighbor, but those 13 that day, just a stark representation of how fiercely divided and how it was community against community. But that's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed the story of Shelton Laurel. Totally true story. I definitely recommend people to read up on it. And thank you. Keep sending me your stories and suggestions, y'all. Keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.